Hi, I'm Louis Pantalone, president of Our Lady of Mt Carmel Society in Hammonton, New Jersey, and you're watching the Italian American Podcast.
See that you're born an Italian if you want your life to be great. See that you're born an Italiano and your life will be great.
How about some Donadell?
That's a nice.
Hey there, Paisani, and welcome back to another episode of the Italian American Podcast. I'm John Viola, along with my partner in crime, the notorious POB, the Italian American Wikipedia, Patrick O'Boyle. We are coming to you from the corner of Mulberry and Grand, in the heart of Manhattan's Little Italy, the crossroads of Italian America, and Red Sauce Studio. And we are bringing you another week of Italian American heritage, history, and hilarity at the Italian American Podcast. Thanks for watching and listening. Make sure to subscribe, give us a like, and follow along if you are new here. We hope you're very much going to enjoy this one. Today, we are recording on July 2nd. This episode's going to come out a week and a half maybe later, but it's an episode that speaks to the arrival of summer here in New York City and around the country, feast season in Italian America, and today we're going to discuss really the preeminent feast day, I think, in the Italian American calendar, which is Our Lady of Mt Carmel, and we have the opportunity to introduce you to the oldest celebration of Our Lady of Mt Carmel.
Oldest anything.
Of anything, of any
Any
Italian
Italian
feast.
American
Yeah.
anything, because we are the nerds, right? Plus, there's
Yeah.
no one academically has any proof of anything of an Italian American celebration older than the Feast of Our Lady of Mt Carmel in Hammonton.
Yeah.
There's Italian American proto institutions,
Yeah.
like the parish of St. Mary Magdalene de Pazzi in Philly.
All right.
It's about 1852. It predates Leo XIII establishing Italian national parishes. So it wasn't a de jure Italian parish, but it was a de facto Italian parish. St. Anthony's on Sullivan Street in Manhattan, here, was again, before Leo XIII's erection of national parishes. It was run by Italian Franciscans. It was a de facto Italian parish, not a de jure one, meaning that there was Italian Franciscans here
Right.
that helped the initial waves of Italian immigrants coming to the United States. But no one, I can sit here at 50 years old and say this, no one has scoured America for these types of things. And without question, I put out the challenge out there.
Yeah.
There is no event in Italian America older than this feast of Our Lady of Mt Carmel in Hammonton, New Jersey.
No, absolutely.
This is one of the most important episodes we have done, bar none, of the 400 or so we've done.
I'm wearing my Lady of Snow shirt, 1888, because I still believe, and again, where the authorities are, I don't know. I still believe we're the second oldest continually celebrated feast, Italian American feast in the country.
I
in
would
Brooklyn.
say-
You're gonna say third, right?
You're 1880.
88.
You're fourth.
Fourth now.
Yeah.
We just got.
Well, I'll give you what the top five are.
All right, go.
Historically, that have survived.
Yeah.
I will never nerd out on an episode more than this one. I have spent 50 years accumulating this
Yeah,
stuff
you've
in
been
my
waiting for
head.
this.
Might be a triple episode. I don't care. I'll hijack this. I'll send you back to where.
It'll just be every week. We'll come back to this
No,
conversation.
because this is the Andy Panzarello, whose birthday is today.
Also,
He passed away July 2nd.
Brandon Ficarra. You've seen him on the
Happy
show a
birthday.
bunch. He works with us here. He's one of our guest hosts. Happy birthday, Brandon. Wherever you are. I think you're in LA right now. Celebrate with your family. But thanks for being a great part of the team.
July 2nd, today's Madonna della Grazia also. But Andy Panzarello was the sexton at Holy Rosary Church in Jersey City. Holy Rosary is the first Italian national parish in New Jersey, which was established in 1885. Andy would have been 89 today. Andy, because Jersey City was one of, like East Harlem, was one of the escape routes for the bad sanitary conditions of Little Italy, of 5 points. So by the 1870s, there's Italians in Jersey City. Andy told me, so when he took the job as sexton of Holy Rosary, there was still old-timers, really old Italian ladies, I'm saying in their 90s, who had been here in the 1870s.
Wow.
They had come, right? And he said that they had told him. So he had a lot of stories. That's a lot of stuff. They would tell him stuff, and he told me. So that's kind of the focus we got on those years. He told me so many feasts had ended because of World War I.
Wow, can you imagine
Because
that?
now during World War II too, some places kept the procession, but it was kind of considered inappropriate, I would say, to keep a feast going on during the war. So they'd have the procession, but not the feast. And a lot of them died with World War II. Not because they.
Right, sure.
He told me they were ones that were dead by World War I. So what I'm saying is, when we're doing this mapping of what's numerically the oldest, we're working on what we know from the 1980s, right? So there could have been a feast. And there could have been a dozen in 1883 down here. They just didn't survive.
Right, but the survivors we know.
The survivors we know, I would say since the 1980s that we know that from our history that have survived, would be Hammonton, 1875, the oldest. Interesting enough, a church that was taken over by the Palatines. 1884, East Harlem. They were from Pola. That's the first Palatine parish. Palatine's an order of priests, for people who don't know, Italian order of priests. United States. So they were from Pola. That's 1884. 1887 was Our Lady of Mt Carmel, not in Marian, not in the Mt Carmel parish in Jersey City, but out of Holy Rosary in Jersey City. You guys are next, the Sanzays in Williamsburg at 1888. And Steve LaRocca's would be the fifth that I know of,
Right.
which would be 1889 San Rocco di Potenza. That's
Right.
when Steve LaRocca runs. If there are older ones in Chicago, then in the 1890s it starts to
Right, it
snowball,
starts to boom.
right?
Yeah.
But I cut that off as between 1875 and 1890.
Yeah.
They are the five that I know that still exist. If someone out there, and if it exists, it's going to be in Chicago. If there's one that's before 1890 in Chicago, I don't think there is, but there might be.
I want to make sure, because this conversation is going to keep going and it's going to be a great one, and I want to welcome our guest today because he's the president of the Our Lady of Mt Carmel Society of Hammonton, New Jersey. This is your fifth term, you said. You've been president of the society. Louis Pantalone, welcome to the Italian American
Well,
Podcast.
thank you,
for
gentlemen.
coming.
Thank
It's a
you for
tremendous
having me.
honor.
Thank you for coming up.
This year and this month to have you here in the studio.
Thank you.
I want to bring you into the conversation now before we talk about the feast and you share with us your community and its history and what people have to look forward to in the next 150 years. This is really a topic that everybody's so excited about. And, you know, I was driving yesterday. You talk about feast, right? We've done all this work and tried to compile lists and find feasts and wherever you go. And, you know, I moved to the Westchester suburbs 2 years ago, maybe three, from Brooklyn. And I was driving yesterday. We were actually on a pretty tense work call. I hung up with you.
Every call we have
Every
is
call
tense.
is tense.
That's
And
why
I
I'm
was
gonna
like
be in a-
super stressed. And I see a lawn sign. I'm driving through Mamaroneck, Westchester County. I see a lawn sign, St. Vito Feast, June 20. So it had passed. But I said to myself, I've been here 3 years already. I'm 2 towns over, whatever. I had no idea this feast was going on. So now it's another sort of truffle hunt to go on to find what's there, how old is it, who's the community, what's the church. I absolutely love the fact that we can chase down these kind of things. But for you guys, there's no chasing down. It's a continuous 150 years.
Yeah. Technically 151 because it's the anniversary, so you don't count the first year.
Oh, is that how it goes?
Right. So it's the
It's always
anniversary.
confusing to me. Yeah.
Yeah,
I-
that's
Thank
yeah.
you. That makes me 51 years old. Ain't that fantastic?
Sorry about that.
To me, that's even worse.
But you guys have never been interrupted. It's been continuous.
Through all of the wars,
Yeah.
and especially COVID. I mean, we were the only feast that took place during COVID. Wow. And we had great cooperation all the way through the town supporting it and the mayor and council. So our membership is dedicated, and they've always been, and that's why we're able to survive this many years.
Hammonton, South Jersey, you said between Philly and Atlantic City.
Yeah, about 30 miles either way, east and west.
That's blueberry country.
It sure is.
It's pretty rural.
Yes.
That's the Pine Barrens, technically.
It is. It
the
is.
soprano. Some people, not that they. I get soprano questions. Where are the Pine Barrens?
That's a very
from
Jersey
Jersey.
thing, the Pine Barrens. Like
It's
there's a
okay.
whole culture defined down there, and like
Beautiful area.
yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, it really.
That's
is.
why it's called the Garden State
That's really true. Yeah.
for our area. Yeah.
So now, the people in Hammonton, you know, it is sort of a little remote location. You would think, you know, New York, Chicago, Newark, whatever. How Italian is the population there?
Up until like probably the census before the last, it had the most Italians per capita.
Oh, wow.
So it was highly Italian populated. A lot of the immigrants settled in Hammonton had the opportunity that for them was mostly farming and clothing manufacturers. Our little town had probably 50 shops that did. Hammonton Park Clothes was a very famous one, and they actually did all the president's suits right in this little town. So a lot of opportunity for them.
And nowadays, what's the population overall?
Probably about 14,000 maybe.
Okay. This is sizable for a town.
For our town, but we host close to 100,000 people through that week.
They do, like, Hammonton is under-celebrated.
Yeah.
Because you have 4 feasts. I mean, depending on how you do the numbers.
Correct. It started with the Feast of St. John. There were actually 3 main ones during my...
John the Baptist in June.
June 24th, right. Us in July 16th, and the Feast of the Assumption on August 15th.
And you have a San Antonio, the St. Anthony the Abbot Society.
They just started back up again.
They just started back up again. And but their problem is St. Anthony the Abbot's feast is January 17th.
Right.
So what do you do?
Jason. So they didn't have an outdoor feast,
Right.
but there was
Right.
for you think of a town in the Pine Barrens, an agricultural town, a manufacturing town, to have all this still going, that's a real credit to these people.
And at that point, we had 3 parishes. We had St. Joseph, St. Martin, and St. Anthony back in the day. And obviously they consolidated now to one parish called St. Mary of Mt Carmel.
You know, it's funny to me because you talk about these feasts and 100,000 people going down. I was saying off mic, we have not had our Greetings from Italian America show in a long time, but we have a lost recording from Mount Carmel, the big time in Roseto, Pennsylvania. We were there 2 summers ago, and long overdue for us to release this. The people were so kind. It was a great town, completely devoted to Our Lady and the feast. And obviously in Brooklyn, there's the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel and St. Paulinus of Nola, which is my community, not my feast. But you get pulled.
That's because this is going to be a 4-part episode, I think, right now. Because in Brooklyn, so the Church of Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Brooklyn, I believe, was also another Palatine foundation. I think they were a foundation of East Harlem. The original church was torn down when the BQE went in. Another trophy for Mark.
Thank you,
Robert Moses. Just loved Italian parish.
Yeah,
There's Italian parish.
Yeah,
Let's tear it down.
Yeah.
You ever see the highways he built?
Yeah.
They look like he was in Briaga when they did it like this and all the way because
do.
all he wanted to do was take out Italian parishes. That was his biggest thrill in life.
There's a piece out there.
He tried to take out Most Precious Blood.
Sure, of course
that
he
was
did.
on another one on his hit list.
His Cross City, whatever.
But the interesting thing about Mount Carmel in Brooklyn was the church is torn down for the BQE. They built a new structure that's kind of interesting. If it lacks in aesthetic beauty, it was a combination of like the church, the school, and a compound.
It was a compound,
1940s compound. But what's interesting is the Giglio of Nola that's in June, with the famous Giglio of Brooklyn, and the Feast of Our Lady in Mount Carmel, which is July 16th. The parish merged them into one.
Right.
And moved the Giglio into July and kind of made it a hybrid feast. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because I'm going to get that, he's off topic. No, I'm not off topic today. Because what was different is in certain places, the parish took over the feast. That was not the case in Hammonton. You were still, after 150 years, an independent organization.
Yeah, we preceded the church by 12 years.
Wow.
So the first Catholic church did not open until 12 years post 1875.
That's pretty powerful to think about, really.
You know what I'm thinking now?
Marching around the streets in a place that you didn't even have a church. That's really intense.
I don't think I've ever geeked out on an episode like this because you know what I just realized? The Diocese of Trenton is 1884. So when the Diocese of Newark is 1852, 1853, something like that. So Hammonton at that time is part of the Archdiocese of Newark.
Or Philly?
No.
No, it wouldn't.
We had all Newark. So what happened was Philly had South Jersey, New York had North Jersey. The Archdiocese of Newark created, at the time, the Diocese of Newark. That's created, and it becomes the whole state.
The whole state.
The reason is that it's the archives, right? We were talking early on show. I would love to know, because the great mystery, why I brought you on with this obsessive hunger I have to know about Hammonton is, who were those first people in 1875 who started that feast?
Yeah.
Where were they from? How did they get there?
Well,
Do
we
you
were
have
talking
any
about
information on that?
Yeah, there's the 3 founders was Antonio Capelli, Luigi Vado, and Emmanuel Persico. So what they did was they settled on Pine Road, And we have a monument there today. We have that. We own that piece of ground, and we
Wow.
structured a monument on our 100th year.
Wow.
And we go back there every July 16th to commemorate their coming over. But then every 10 years we have a mass out there and so forth. But they were the founders, and from our understanding, from just Italy. And they took a picture of the Blessed Mother, and we think we have that. We're trying to get it authenticated.
Wow.
So we believe on the back of that picture it states it was purchased in 1820. But we're trying. It's not a painting. It's a
lithograph.
Print.
A print. And we're trying. We took it to Philly. They couldn't do it. They could only approximate when it was, but no real authenticity that we're trying to accomplish. But that's what they use. And no streets. They were in the fields.
Wow.
So they processed through the fields.
How big is the image?
I guess
That's a moment for Christie's, isn't it?
Yeah.
12.
I mean, there's plenty of places you could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy. We're trying to find another location to authenticate it. So if there's any recommendations.
You should talk to Joe downstairs.
But yeah, that's something we could probably help with. That would be. And I love that kind of stuff. You know, what was the original celebration? Gesso's in where? In
Sicily. That's
Sicily.
where Jill Biden comes from.
Oh, really?
But I don't think
GESO?
Jason, yeah, sure.
Yeah, Gesso.
SSO, I believe.
Yeah, GESSO, correct.
Yeah, you know, I think about the geographic sort of, you know, you could trace a feast by what was the hometown, and right. But Our Lady of Mt Carmel is different in that it's sort of the pan Italian American devotion now, right? Is that fair?
May I?
Yeah, go on.
Because I've been waiting 50 years for this.
Here we go.
Now I found out I'm 51 years old.
Okay.
I've been waiting 51 years for this day. The first thing is that the pictures, so how most of these feasts started out was, number one, you have Irish clergy who think this is absolutely insanity.
Sure.
Right? Because you're going to embarrass me in front. My father's Irish off the boat, I could say this. I know how their brain works, which is a whole other podcast. So the Irish have this complete fear of what will the WASPs think of us, because it's the baggage they carry over from Ireland. So they're not crazy about this procession tradition, which is probably one of the most the most integral part of the Southern Italian Catholic tradition. So what happens is these immigrants come over with pictures from their hometown. Now, you know a generic Mount Carmel. If you're in Italy,
Yeah.
there's a Mount Carmel from your town, and that's the real Mount Carmel, because the crown is this way, the dress is that way. It's always personalized, right? But they would have come over with these lithographs, which were affordable, because there was the old Italian tradition of putting the big quadra over the bed. So you have the big 3x4 by huge religious picture over the bed, which would be the heirloom of heirlooms.
Right.
So you brought this over from Italy. You put it in the bed. It's like the center of sanctity in the house, right? But why is it over the bed or the parents' bed? Because that's where the family grows. Really, you have to take productivity of not reproduction as a sanctified thing.
Right.
Growing the family, you know,
Right.
especially when you lost children to death and stuff like that. They would take down the quadra, these big pictures of this lithograph of the saint of the hometown or the Madonna or whatever the patron was, and that's what we know was used in the first processions,
Yeah.
because they did not have the economic means to get statues. Now, what comes afterwards is, after more Byzants come and the community grows, they go and they collect money, and they oft times when they could afford it would get statues from Italy
Right.
that were made to look like the patroness in Italy or the patron, or they would get American, like the Prado, which was a company, I think they were in Chicago. They would get American-made statues, often from German Catholic companies in the United States, of their patron saint, like things like Saint Anthony. But we know, like, you have that quadro, that's the best word, the picture. That lithograph was the first. Now, we know for a fact that was the case in East Harlem. So this is the first feast in the United States, 1875, with devoted to Our Lady of Mt Carmel. We take out the picture. Later on, we get a statue. East Harlem was the same thing. They were from Pola.
Right.
Pola has a big devotion to Our Lady of Mt Carmel. What probably happened is, because the condition was so horrible here where we're sitting now in Little Italy, that they moved to East Harlem because it was more hygienic.
Right.
They took the quadra with them, which is probably the one thing they took with them from Pola. They had a celebration in a backyard of one of the tenements. And with time, they went and got the statue made.
Right.
So that's the first. That's why I'm saying this is 101 today, because if you study Hammonton, everything you need to know about Italian feasts you can follow in Hammonton. So it's the Virgin. Our Lady of Mt Carmel is just an outfit, a dress up, an image of the Virgin Mary. But at the end of the day, it's Mary and Jesus. So you have Mary there with Jesus. But where does Mount Carmel come from?
It's an apparition. It's an event.
Well, it's a series of it's an apparition, but the apparition is halfway through the story. It's not in the beginning of the story. So what happened was in Mount Carmel, in Palestine, right? That's a holy mountain in the Bible. Elijah was up there. There were a group of monks who went up there and built a monastery up there and devoted themselves to the Virgin Mary. They're probably the first religious order devoted to the Virgin Mary. They become the Carmelites. They don't start out as the Carmelites. They become the Carmelites. Then we know with the Crusades and Muslim invasions from the east, Palestine becomes a mess, right? It's a constant in history. And these monks up at Mount Carmel say, this is not tenable anymore. We got to get out of Dodge. Now, they had become known for the habit they wore. They had like a striped habit, and they became known, and they were kind of like, because they would be like, well, who are you to say you're the monks of the Virgin Mary? Why can't anyone use that title? So they kind of, they were really proto in this. So that they come down off the mountain, and the Crusaders are down there, and they're like, listen, we're getting out of Dodge. Now, the thing about the Crusades was you had people from all over Christendom at the time.
Right.
So the Carmelites kind of broke down, and you're going to go to Sicily, and you're going to go to Naples, and I'm going to say, it's refugees, really, basically.
Yeah, of course.
Now, Richard the Lionhearted brought some back to England. Some went to Sicily, and some went to mainland Italy, trying to figure out where do we go from here. Now, when they got to the south of Italy, they brought this devotion to the Virgin Mary that they had from the mountain. That's basically the forerunner of Our Lady of Mt Carmel. So they start to sprinkle themselves through southern Italy. On July, so why is July 16th such an important holiday? So an Englishman became head of these group of Carmelites, named for the mountain they were on, St. Simon's Stock. And in like the most non-Italian Catholic country in the world, which was the most Catholic country, Marian country, England at the time was still Catholic before Henry VIII. In Aylesford in Kent, St. Simon's Stock says the Blessed Virgin Mary, and I'm giving you someone's going to call up, I'm not giving the literal translation of this before somebody gets annoying and starts annoying me with the quotes. He basically says to the Virgin Mary, like, we're dedicated to you, help us. Everything's a mess. Give us a privilegium. Privilegium was the Latin word for protection, like a knightly protection. And the Virgin Mary said to him, you know this outfit that everybody makes fun of you? This, again, I'm ad-libbing here. Take this scapular. So that's the wool brown part of the it's like the apron that the monks wore, right? I got it. Right. I got the Napoleon version that has five.
You can zoom in. You
got
got the best
five.
protection.
I got the Napoleon one. You have
got
all five put together. There's my brown part, right? But so the Virgin Mary comes down and says to St. Simon's Stock that she's gonna the legend is he said this prayer called Flows Carmelite. I hope he did. It's absolutely beautiful. And she comes down and says, all right, I got you covered. Wear my brown scapular, right? I'll make sure that you never wind up in hell. I will. And for the Protestants listening to that, she said, like, I'll always intercede to make sure that you have the graces never to fall off the wagon. Right. And I'm going to protect the Carmelites, right? But as I say all the time, is this July 16th, which should be an English holiday, became a Southern Italian holiday. So how does it get? So the Carmelites infused themselves through southern Italy, right, and all through Christendom. But an important thing that doesn't come up about Mount Carmel, and this is such an important year, 2025, is that now to Rome, people made pilgrimages in holy years.
Which is this year, the Jubilee.
Which is this year. Now, in the south of Italy, you could walk it. Now, it's going to take you 2 weeks to get there, right? You're not going to walk there from, it's going to take you a month if you're going from France, right?
With the exception of horses and carts, everything was a walk, right? Every pilgrimage.
And so we know that in the year, I think it was 1500, I guess the Carmelites had their church going in Rome at the time. A lot of the people from the south who walked to Rome for the Holy Year became, it was kind of, they caught on to the devotion of Lady of Mt Carmel. That's how we know the church in Naples. The belief is that the church in Naples to Our Lady of Mt Carmel came about because of the pilgrimage of 1500. Now, I know my grandma's side come from Pian di Sorrento. It came for us, I believe, with was it the pilgrimage of 1500 or 1700? One of the pilgrimages, maybe it was 1550, I forget offhand, but Also, what happened is people would go to Rome for the pilgrimage and come home and build the church for Our Lady of Mt Carmel, or build devotion to her. Now, but the one thing to add is, so it grows, so all over Italy. If you're in the south of Italy, if your town doesn't have a feast for Our Lady of Mt Carmel, the Frazione does, or the next town over, it's one of the few things in the south of Italy that's consistent, right? Everywhere in the south of Italy, there's a devotion to Our Lady of Mt Carmel, even if it's in the neighborhood of a specific town. When the immigrants came here, and you had people from all different towns, Italians want to fight because that's what they're bred to do. Southern Italians have a bicker, argumentative gene. If you don't agree with me, I don't know where you lived. So what are you going to pick as the name of the parish? San Mercurio, the patron of my town, you know?
Yeah.
San whatever, you know, Morona la Porta Salva. So the thing was, Mount Carmel was one thing that everybody could sign off on. That's why St. Anthony had so many parishes. They had 3 things they could get him. Mount Carmel, once you did the Mount Carmel, you could get a St. Anthony, you could get a Holy Rosary, you could get a St. Joseph, and then everybody started to fight. In the Archdiocese of Newark, New Jersey, because that's where I'm from and that's what I know, we had 34 parishes. We had 34 Italian national parishes. Our Lady of Mt Carmel is the most popular name for any parish in the Archdiocese, more than the Sacred Heart, St. Joseph. Our Lady of Mt Carmel is the number 1 name for a parish in the Archdiocese of Newark.
Wow.
So just I want to wrap up with that. So that became a rallying point because you could be from Sicily, you could be from Basilicata, you could be from Abruzzo, but we all share this devotion to Our Lady of Mt Carmel. The original image of Our Lady of Mt Carmel, the one that's in Rome, and there's a copy in Naples, and a lot to the south of Italy is, she was called Stella Maris by the Carmelites, because when they're taken off from Palestine, they're refugees. And the Virgin Mary, who's prefigured as Star of the Sea, they turn to her and says, guide us in the right direction. So Marian is called Mary Star of the Sea because she would save them in storms and stuff like that. And the Carmelites said that we're refugees on these boats. Put us in the right direction. So if you see the really old images of Our Lady of Mt Carmel in Italy, they're going to be red and blue and with a star on top. And they're going to look more like a Greek Byzantine, not a lot, but a little bit more of an icon than an actual image. But what happens over time is because that scapular, that work apron of brown wool is so popular, and the Carmelites start to give it to lay people, they redress Mary in the habit of the Carmelites. That's why you can see really old images of Mary in blue and red as Mount Carmel. And then you might see what we've come to see as Our Lady of Mount Carmel, Mary in the Carmelite habit and her and Jesus holding scapulars. So the reason I went off on this is probably the only time I've really gone off. I want to give everybody a background of what gets us to this point. Because in summary, once you get Our Lady of Mt Carmel as the parish patron, people from all over Italy, not just one town, all got behind her. In Holy Rosary in Jersey, they had 3 Mount Carmel processions for 3 different towns.
Wow.
And in the 30s, they amalgamated into one because you brought all these people surrounded this one devotion.
So I want to give Louis some time to talk about
I'm done.
the feet.
I'm going home.
I gotta tell you,
I say that for 51 years. Now I'm gonna have a glass of water.
I want him to get a chance to really talk about the unique iteration in Hammonton, New Jersey. But I do have to say, you brought up before these images, right? And how each one is slightly different. And Nikki can put it on the screen. I'll send him the picture. Like, I was in Rome. I have a devotion to Our Lady of Mt Carmel from East Harlem.
Okay.
And even though my family's from Brooklyn, I've taken that devotion over the years from going up there. And I was in Rome in an antique shop, and I look up at the wall, and there's this felt pennant, it's like square shape, rectangle shape, with Our Lady of Mt Carmel from East Harlem on it. And I said to myself, how did this thing end up back in Rome?
I was there with you that day.
You were there with me that day. That was like one of the best finds I ever had. But I'm always conscious of the fact that you could swap in just a generic statue, but these have their own devotion. As a matter of fact, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I will tell you off mic, I have 2 members of our team today on what might just be a wild goose chase, chasing down an image of Our Lady of Mt Carmel in Harlem. They're up there now. And God willing, they may come back with it.
Is this breaking news?
It's very. I haven't told you yet. I'll tell you off mic how they could end poorly.
See how you
well,
tease me?
But you're gonna like this one off mic. But let's talk about your image, a statue now. The statue's here. This is the statue you guys process every year. What is it that makes your devotion unique in Hammonton? What are the unique expressions of it? What are the unique traditions you guys have?
Again, I think it comes down to our ancestors who came over here with that devotion and that desire to make sure that they never forgot where they came from and to say thank you for being here in the land of opportunity. And it's hard to maintain that when people start to drift, right? And back when I was growing up, it was very, very important to me. The story I tell is I can remember as a child, I lived right down the street from the church, my brother and I. And my dad was a very, very prominent member of the society. And back then, they didn't really have uniforms. You had a pair of black pants, you had a long sleeve white shirt, and you had a badge.
That's like us. That's just,
Right?
we still do that.
That was it. So, and every July 16th morning, he would be up. The first salute went up at 7 o'clock in the morning, right?
Now, can I jump in there?
Please
Because I
do.
want to do teaching. Why that is in Italy, for the big feast, you remember, you're in a world before alarm clocks.
Mm-hmm.
And they would start masses in a lot of towns at like 4 a.m. So they would do what was the first shot in the morning was a fireworks that went off
Mm-hmm.
to wake you up in your bed. This is before people had electricity or clocks
Mm-hmm.
or alarm clocks. And that's another tradition. Like I said, anything you want to learn about time feast, go study Hammonton. That's another tradition that you kept in Hammonton.
Yes, we did. So he would get up, and they actually do, we still do to today, 2 processions. The first procession is just, we go around to the stores in town and through the town to, stop in and say hello and get everybody energized for the day. So he would go down there, and I would tell my mom, I said, I want to go with my father. I want to go with Daddy. She said, you can't go, you can't. And I was very persistent to the point where she basically threw me out of the house with my long sleeve shirt and my black trousers, and I walked down there and I was able to participate with my father. And to me, that's never changed. My brother, my uncle's in the society, my 2 cousins are in the society. We have a lot of families that are that way, and it's from father to son, basically, how it progressed. So there is a passion for that, and there's a lot of extracurricular activities that happen in this day. We have a big carnival, and we have entertainment, but the focus that we've never lost is that of the procession and the Blessed Mother and her devotion. And we're very proud of that, especially in times when, you shouldn't, you may not have been allowed to have it. There was nothing that was going to stop us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was demonstrated by our ancestors through the wars, right? Mm-hmm. You mentioned about World War II, right? Well, yeah, you didn't want to have a feast. They were rationing things, but the procession always went on. The other thing I think you may be aware of is the candles that the women used to carry, the big candles.
We've had a huge conversation about this.
Okay.
Did Charlie tell you?
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I can't believe you're bringing this up.
So the bigger the candle, the more the prayers, more they needed answered, right?
Yeah.
So, those candles were 3 foot tall and probably about 5 inches in diameter, and they would walk in their stocking feet.
Are you the guy who ruins Christmas presents?
No.
Yes, you are.
Why?
Because I'm trying to order you 2 of them. Did Charlie tell you this?
No, I'm just...
For the 150th, I'm on the phone with a candle maker in South Dakota. God is my witness. It's 4 feet by 3 inches. I'm getting you Paschal candles with no decorations on them.
Oh, my God.
And I said to Charlie, what can we give these nuts? You got to go. I said, Charlie, what can I give this guy for the 150th?
That would be awesome.
I am trying to get their Germans in South Dakota.
Wow.
I do have personal candle makers. It's another story for another day. To get them. And you want to know, we did research. We wanted to give a whole, do you know the background of those candles? The people,
miracles.
Yeah.
They were so big because wax, if you look back in history, electric lights are probably the biggest economic revolution that changed people's lives, because even rich people in the days before gas lamps and stuff like that, if you were well-to-do middle class, you went to it was very expensive to have a half-hour candle light. Mm-hmm. If you were poor, you just stuck with the fire. You might have 10 minutes of candle light. Candles were so expensive for the wax. And people in the south of Italy, besides the Cinta, which we know with the big candle houses, they would make vows, cure my son and whatever.
Right.
But they would take their weight and they would weigh themselves, and for their weight, they would buy candles in that weight. That was an economic gift beyond words. We were doing research because we wanted to surprise you with this. We found an article in East Harlem from 1920 for Lady of Mt Carmel, and the woman made a vow during World War I If her son came back unscathed from the war, she would get a candle for Our Lady of Mt Carmel. Her weight, and remember, they were big ladies. But they were able to eat us, but I mean, that's not...
My grandfather used to
they were
call them the water buffaloes.
right,
Yeah.
they're big. My grandfather... So her husband, her husband, and her son's weight combined. Her son came back from World War I unharmed. And they were having a candle made of that weight. Now, they would carry them lit in the procession because they would leave them in the church to burn. Some of those candles, I didn't check out the math on this. This was what was reported. We had a lot of articles on this. Sometimes they could burn for 2 years.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So the mother would say, okay, I am leaving this as a candle burning night and day in front of the Blessed Mother as a thank you. So when you had the feast every year and all these big candles, the church was lit constantly with these huge votive candles. Now, the only place I've seen this survive in Laurino, in the Church of Laurino, in the Cilento for Santa Elena, that church, I think it was a Roman temple. I think it's that old, right? They have cast iron, like, it looks like an umbrella rack.
Yeah, I've seen this somewhere else. I have to.
You would get these huge. Now, some of these candles went 4 feet, 5 feet. I could only get 4 feet. Believe me, I wanted bigger because you see how whacked I am in the head. If I could have got, and what was happening was
yourself.
I'm sorry.
Well, you should get into making these. Everybody's
You're in
making
trouble.
cake. Go to
Why don't you call my
Michael's
mother?
Art Supply.
Tell my mother you said I was in the whack that.
Yeah. When you tried to make coffee and burn the garage.
Yeah, let's not talk about that one. No, I didn't burn the garage, but there was a 4 alarms.
Almost burned the garage. Keep going.
That was good. But so they would leave these candles in these, it looks like racks. I was in Laurino on the Feast of Santa Elena, and I saw these huge candles left lit. See, because in Italy, they carry them in procession in some place still, they just don't light them. Because electric lights, you don't need this stuff anymore, right? But who kept this tradition? We actually were supposed to go today. The Greeks in Astoria, Queens, they have a shrine to St. Irene. They keep that tradition. They put it in sand. They have these big, huge candles. And that goes back to show that so many of these Southern Italian procession traditions we get from the Greeks.
Like the fact that we're processing with a 2D image before a 3D statue. That's much more Greek in origin, and having the icon, and like think about taking out these icons for protections. I mean, how many times did the Pope himself take out the icons out of the Holy of Holies and process to protect the city? I mean, that's where this is
if you go
born.
If you go on newspapers.com and you look up Our Lady, now Lady of Mt Carmel in East Harlem has a lot of articles because it's in New York. You have the Times and the Tribune, all that stuff. If you Google Lady of Mt Carmel, East Harlem candles, you're going to be reading all night long.
Let me ask
I also go back to you, so I don't want to cut you off because it can't. Go and tell us about your candles. Now that you ruined I was that kid. I would find the Christmas gifts, and my mother goes, "Well, you ruined Christmas now." But go ahead and tell us about the candle tradition.
Yeah, again, you covered it. It was to ask for a miracle. Somebody was sick. Somebody was away in the war. To bring them home safely or to cure whatever ailment they had. So again, a very strong tradition for them.
But you don't have them anymore in the procession.
We do not.
Well, I took care of that. Check that off the box.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no. But it would be nice to see that come back again. It would be really nice to see it for this year.
Get some carriers ready.
Yes,
I can tell you that.
So back then, it started with a picture, right? So now the procession has over 20 saints in it. So we take almost every saint that's in St. Joseph's Church out on a carrier.
Wow.
And still do the processions about 1.3 miles around town. That route's still the same now that it has been since we moved into the church area. You talk about praying. We did a documentary, like to share it with you, and we about getting into this year and your memories, of people's memories, and one of our members, Larry Longo, his dad, and it chokes you up because his dad, when he's saying it, his dad told him when he went to Vietnam, he says, you pray every day to the Blessed Mother and she'll get you home. And to this point, it's emotional. And that's the kind of devotion that, we're able to continue. That was from day one with our ancestors, and it's still to this day. And we've been blessed. We're a small organization. Large organizations, you get 5% of the people that do 90% of the work. We're 44, and we get 95% of the people to do 100% of the work. The ones that can't, they're not, they're time to rest. But I mean, everybody participates, and it's family oriented. We have a mass to start the feast. We have a mass every 10 years at the site. We have a mass during the feast, to to be together and to keep that faith going. And we're trying to instill that in the youth of today. It's very difficult, as you all know. I mean, the churches are finding it harder and harder to have these young ones go to church. So we're just finding ways to keep this going because we don't want to see it lost.
You know, it's funny. We're in a text group with some of our more Catholic friends, and we just got a link to an article yesterday night about a finding, a study that was done by the Vatican that sort of was suppressed and ended up being released about tradition and ritual and these kind of things. And one of the findings in it was saying, like, this is what young people are coming to Catholicism for today: ritual, tradition, stability and peace, and frankly, like peace and quiet and reverence in a world where they're constantly bombarded with, electronic nonsense. And I find that, one of the things I'm proudest of having undertaken this project with the podcast is that because of particularly his devotion, but our shared devotion and the fact that this comes up a lot, I think there's probably about a dozen feasts around the country that have been restarted by listeners or people that we've met through the IFL and things like that, and people who've gotten involved with the stuff.
Charlie Spada, one of your guys.
Right,
He's
exactly.
a perfect example. And there's a J.D. Calderon with St. Anthony. So I agree.
Yeah.
And it gives you hope.
It gives you hope, right? It's like you've made it, like, I see it with our feast in Brooklyn. You talk about making sure you do it. It's 44 people. My family's been out of the neighborhood since I was 4. But I think pretty much every summer of my life, I've gone back for August 5th for Our Lady. And, the family is shrinking and the feast is shrinking, right? And it's just this little localized devotion. But she has interceded so much in my life that I just, I fail at a lot of the commitments I try to make and say, I'll do this. That I just can't fail. You know what I mean? And that's a real thing.
And today, people go to specialists. What I'm trying to say is, like, the old days, people depended on God. My kid was sick.
Yep.
The doctors say there's nothing I can do, and I throw myself at the feet of the Virgin Mary. You're a mother, you lost a son, you understand what I'm going through. And I said to myself, you could see, I don't want to see the devotion, when people didn't need God anymore for miracles.
Right.
For Mary to say, ask God for him. When they didn't need God anymore for miracles, that's what, because we're like, we're so blessed. People today, we have it so good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, not to get, theological, but like, or preachy, but, we live in a society where people think they can control and fix everything, right? So there's a doctor for that, there's a pill for that, there's a this for that, there's a specialist, go to the next opinion. Sometimes it's in God's hands. We forget that. And we forget to what's the word we're looking for? We forget to ask.
One of the New York Times articles when I was researching the candles, so remember, you have WASPs, who are reporters, right? Anglo-Saxon Protestants who think that Italians are savages in everything, from what they eat to how they act and their processions. So they're kind of going up there. I feel like they're on safari sometimes to East Harlem. And there's a little boy with a candle, and the reporter's like, well, why are you up here with a candle? He's like, because I was sick last year, and they prayed for me. And, like, I remember being healed. And the 10-year-old kid's like, I'm never going to miss this. Yeah. And you knew them when you were a kid. Those old timers from the World War, they were devoted.
Absolutely.
They were the really devoted people.
Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned that.
There's a very similar article about our feast from the 1880s, maybe early 1890s, about basically like how shocked the paper, I think it was the Brooklyn Eagle, and they're like, the Italians congregated and there was not some kind of
everything was nice.
Caveman dance. It's
fireworks were beautiful.
Yeah. It's funny to me, I take great pride in the fact that our feast is so old, fourth oldest maybe. I'm sure for you guys to look at 150 years. I was gifted a recognition in 2023. I'm looking at it at the wall as we speak from the society, and they asked me to speak, but I wasn't. It was a surprise. So I got up and I'm like, what can I say to these people? They all come from my grandmother's town, right? How much this devotion means to me, and I said, I've always been, as a history student, and now doing this, I've looked at this country and the experience here through this lens of what we missed, right? Like, the American Revolution is interesting to me, but my people were still farming in the mountains, and like the Civil War is interesting to me, but we weren't here. Like, and I said to the gathered paesani, I said, we have to remind ourselves, like, for our organization, 130 whatever years it was then. We can look back and think, our society was founded at a time when plenty of people remember the Lincoln assassination, right? So you're talking about 1875 for you guys, right? It's 10 years after. I mean, that's a huge swath of American history.
10 years after the end of the Civil War.
10 years after the end of the Civil War, and people are processing around behind Our Lady of Mt Carmel in Hammonton, New Jersey, and have done that since. So more than the majority of American history, more than the what's the word I'm looking for? More than half of American history, this has been going on. That's something real to attach to. And, you know, I think back to a couple of years ago, bringing my daughter to the feast for the first time. And, yeah, my wife's not a Sanzi, never. Right? And I said to her, listen, get her a baby blue dress. That's what the women wear, right? And my wife happened to get her this blue dress and these little white, like leather ciabatta-looking Italian sandals. And my daughter was maybe barely two at the time, and she came out, and I swear she was wearing shoes my grandmother wore, and it overwhelmed me so much to think of how many, you know, August 5th in my life that I processed with my grandmother behind her, whatever, eventually pushing her in a wheelchair, and here's my little daughter looking like her. And I thought, you know, you could lose a lot of things, but you can't lose these things, you know? That's what it's about.
Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. I mean, I can remember as a child the dedication. There were people that had lost limbs, and the only way this gentleman got around was, you know, the auto mechanics using those creepers. Wow. And he would be on his knuckles going down the street. I mean, it was just incredible, the devotion that everybody has and had for the Blessed Mother.
You can't articulate it.
No,
you have to see it to understand it.
When we process into the church that day, I tell you, your eyes fill up. You're just overwhelmed with emotion. Yeah. It's and every member is that way. Every member. You talk to any one of our members, they all have that feeling. They all have that feeling.
And it's also like, you know, the idea that Mary is the Blessed Mother, right? And like, it's one thing to think about a tripartite living God, right? A deity, and like Christ, all man but all human. But it's very hard, even with the best effort, to picture a flawed human up on that cross, right? It's God, and like, but here everybody has the ability, I would imagine most people, to understand a mother and child relationship, right? There's some reference point there, right. And I know, like with a devotion like that, you look up and like there's a very familiar feeling of this maternal protection, and that's so welcoming in a world where a lot of these concepts are hard to grasp. It's easy to grasp the idea of a caring mother who's looking out for you, and it's
the most Italian concept in the world.
It really is.
You're right.
It's the most Italian concept,
right,
yes.
Patrick? Absolutely. The other thing, I mean, we talked a little bit when you came down to the Feast of St. John about the coordination of the statue, which we're proud to be having and happening this year on the
in Cornet. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
That is the biggie.
Yeah.
Right. That's a huge honor. I just want to tell you about what this honor is. This. In the 15th, I have never nerded out on a podcast like this. This has been like my birthday podcast. It's nothing it's all my interests all kind of like jumbled into one. Again, this is the easy to read version, the kindergarten version, because some nasty person starts clipping that I said 1536 when she said 1530. This is the easy to read version. In I think the 1530s, there was a noble Roman prince because Rome had nobility. It was a papal prince who was very devoted to the Virgin Mary, went to the canons of St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. Now, we don't have a good concept of canons here today, but I got to give you the short version. There'll be 3 more episodes to explain them. They're kind of like a group of priests who live at a very important church, and their whole day is chanting the Liturgy of the Hours, the breviary, the office, so that you would go into church and they'd be chanting all day long. And in Rome, the canons of St. Peter's Basilica was like a very highly appointed, almost like a dignitary honor to be part of these canons. And the noble prince brought them a casket, a chest of gold coins, and he said, "Listen, I want after my death, I want these coins used to be melted down, and to create crowns for images of the Virgin Mary, for Jesus and Mary in the image, that have proved to have been miraculous, meaning that people prayed at these places and miracles happen." And he gave there was a criteria. Your image had to be 200 years of continuous devotion, And yet I documented miracles like Lourdes. You had to sit down and say, listen, there's no way we can explain this. So this became, and all through Europe, all through Italy, they're called pontifically and coronated images of the Virgin Mary, where the canons of the Vatican Basilica say, listen, Holy Father, we think this is a miraculous image, an important image, and the Pope would write off on it. And the Pope, if he couldn't be there, because he was in Rome, he would send a delegate to coronate the statue as miraculous on his behalf. So to go back to what you're doing, you're collecting gold, correct, from your parishioners. So what happened was eventually the gold ran out, but they didn't stop the tradition. They kept the tradition going, and they would go to communities. Now, when they did it in East Harlem, so it's only been happened 5 times. Well, now it's a little bit more, but up until recently, it only happened a handful of times, 3 times, in all North America. It was done for Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Prompt Succor, I think 1903 in New Orleans, Our Lady of Mt Carmel in East Harlem in 1904, and Our Lady of Trois Rivers in Canada, Our Lady of the Rosary. They were pontifically coordinated. Since then, and you guys I think are going to be the 7th, in the modern time, so they were all done before, I would say they were all done before World War I, the World War I era. I'd say in the last 20 years, they've added 2 more, Our Lady of La Leche, which is the first Marian shrine in the whole United States. It's in Florida. It was set up by the Spanish. And they coordinated the image of Our Lady of Mt Carmel in Melrose Park. That's another 30 episode. Melrose Park, forget about it. I'll really go off the deep end with that one.
Devotion, yep.
And yours is going to be, now they've changed the process now, so it has to be recommended by the Bishops' Conference. So the paperwork has changed, but you are getting, tell everybody, you are getting the honor of a pontifical coronation of your image. And the jewelry is the jewelry of the people in your community.
Correct. Exactly.
So you guys have been collecting jewelry.
So we have a local jeweler that's making the crown.
Wow.
And then fortunately for me, my dad was my brother and I and our family, my dad was a past president, and I had his wedding band. And his name is Carmine, and he was named, for the Blessed Mother. So when I spoke to Father, he said, I'd like to take that ring and use it to close the back of the crown. So that will be there forever.
Wow.
So, and other members have donated, so it's very important because a lot of people, want to be a part of that. And it's still very present today. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
You think about people making these donations and a lot of the older traditions and feasts in this country, you see dollars pinned or people making cloth out of dollars and they wrap it around it. But a lot of it is also jewelry, right? There's this ancient tradition of what you have, you give, and that's your,
Now, before some Protestants are going to come and criticize this, let me give the biblical.
Who cares
back.
if they come criticize?
No, but I have the answer.
They can watch the Protestant show.
I have a real.
You're more than welcome to defend the faith.
The reason is people saying why do in the Eastern churches, because the Greeks do the same thing. I say East, I say everybody. This is a Syria accent. Why do we have this concept of Mary as a queen? Right? Doesn't that take away from God? Well, how is Mary possibly a queen? Where in the Bible is Mary the queen? Because if in biblical history, the queen is not the wife of the king; she's the mother. So if you go back to the antiquity of the early patristic days of Christianity, Mary being the mother of God, the Theotokos. If she is the mother of God, and Jesus Christ is God, and Jesus Christ is the King of Heaven, who is the Queen of Heaven?
The mother.
By the Bible, his mother.
Got it.
So that's why she gets the privilege of wearing the crown, because she is the mother of the king.
Oh, makes sense. And so now you guys are going to have this crown made. It's designed by a local jeweler. And who's coming to coronate the statue?
The bishop.
The bishop.
The bishop. Where she sits right now is to the left of the altar if you're facing it. Built a staircase that goes up to it. I got pictures I could share with you. So that'll take place at the 2 p.m. Mass on July 16th.
And that's this statue here.
Yes.
That we're looking at. She's going to be crowned.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing.
Well, the baby Jesus.
Oh, the baby Jesus will get the crown.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes.
That's really
Because you can't take the crown off. That's plaster.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
understand.
makes
I was actually wondering how you guys were going to pull that off.
So you got a town of 14,000. You got a society of 40 some odd people working nonstop, right? And devotion is deep. But you got 100,000 people coming to this. You'll probably get more this year for the 150th, I would assume. What do you tell a listener out there who wants to come and see? Because, again, one of the things you have is like there's dozens of Mount Carmel feasts going on the same day, so you got to kind of pick and choose. I would love to come see this next week, whatever it is. What is the experience for an out-of-town visitor? Like, how do you become part of this? Not necessarily as a society, but
I'll give you a perfect example. I have some friends that I work with that are from different states, and they came here. I invited them down. They came the first year, and they've never left because they understood the sense of belonging, the sense of faith, the dedication that everybody puts into it. Again, the members that we have, they display that pretty much 24/7. The community wraps itself around it. I mean, the town will do anything they have to do to make sure that this succeeds. And it dwindled there for a little bit. In the 1990s, we almost became, one of those afterthoughts, right? And you have to find ways to rejuvenate, and you have to market yourself to the public. And my vice president, Frank Italiano, does a very good job of getting to the masses. Social media has helped us a lot. Opportunities like this have helped us a lot. But to demonstrate that, and we've put things together that people go online and look at, and when they see it, they say, wow, I got to see this in person, right? I want to come and really experience what I've been told. I want to see it and to believe it, basically. And it has grown. It has grown tremendously, and it's a tribute to everybody in that society that really practices what we preach.
So if we come down, if an out of town listener comes down, this year the feast is on what
Wednesday.
Day? Wednesday.
Yes,
it's
July 16th.
July 16th,
Yes.
the actual feast day. You drive into town, kind of park wherever you want. Park at the church.
We there's flyers out there and post on our website. We've set up parking off site. We have shuttles that'll run to bring people in and out, so you don't have to worry about parking.
That's great.
Yeah, and that's helped.
Yeah.
Because to your point, it's a little town. There's only so many places to park,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So people would get frustrated. You try to come into town and I'm not parking. I'm not going to go. I just go down to the shore. Forget about it, right? Not anymore. So we believe we've solved that problem. We have other events that get people to there. Like I mentioned, we're having a drone show, 400 drone show with music, with voiceover that explains the whole feast.
Wow.
It'll start with
That is brilliant. Who came up? Wow.
We did. So
I hope you're filming that.
Oh yeah, I'll show you the clip when we're done. But it starts with Italy, right? The drones go up and the map of Italy.
Give people just to give the audience, if you've never seen this before, this has become like basically a way less dangerous alternative to fireworks, basically. And these little drones go up and they light up in the sky, but they can craft out anything, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So it'll show the map of Italy, and then when that comes apart, when I'm speaking through the whole thing, explaining it. When that falls apart, you're going to see a steamer ship come up, depicting coming over, from Italy to the United States. And you'll see the United States form, and then you'll see what we're known for, the agricultural aspect of it, and then why the immigrants came here, because agriculture was the first and foremost opportunity they were able to seize. At that point, it'll go into the founding members, and you'll see all their names come up.
Wow.
And then it'll go to the house where it started. Then it'll get into the Blessed Mother will come up, and it'll talk about the three. You'll see each parish come up. Saint Joseph, Saint Martin, Saint Anthony will come up there. Then it'll get into the traditions, music, how the music started, the food. You'll see some sandwiches up there, and then you'll see a Ferris wheel. So it's pretty.
To tell the whole story.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question before I know we got to wrap, I got to ask a couple of
This
questions.
is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm dying to go now. I'm
You know
all
what's in
juiced
my
up.
head, don't you?
What?
Next May.
What? You can do it. You can do it. Oh, he's gonna do a show now. Oh, his feast.
From out of my
Forget about
feast.
his-
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have a drone show.
I can help you with
That drone vendor's gonna love meeting him. You'll have your own drone.
Because
guy.
I was thinking, what am I going to do new for next year?
There you
Ba-da-bum,
go.
boom.
Yeah.
Yes, we're always thinking.
God bless you,
He's
Louis.
good at
You're
this.
a good man.
You mentioned music and food. So quickly, is there a traditional song that you guys have that's yours?
Our dad was a musician, and so in 1985, he started a band. And now with local musicians, one was a music teacher in violin, the other was the band director for the high school. And they went out and got musicians. So we formed our own band so that we would always have that tradition and be able to, and that band from 1985 to today is still performing.
That's great.
Yeah, so that
was smart.
Yeah.
Is there a special
running
hymn to Our Lady?
Well, they wrote the band director wrote a song in honor of my father.
Oh, wow.
About the Blessed Mother.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There were different Mount Carmel marches around the country.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
New York had one.
Yeah.
Chicago had one. It depended on where you were. Because remember, these band leaders, they would compose their own.
Yeah.
It was business too.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Marches,
were right.
it
Yeah, they were
It was.
composers. I mean, to the San Gennaro song to me is one of my favorites. It's
Yeah.
a really beautiful hymn. All right, now you got a song. Is there a
Food?
signature food item?
Oh, yes. The sausage, pepper, and onions is one. Then you have the roast pork, broccoli, raw, provolone.
Okay,
is the
that's a
other.
very Philly area thing, right? Yeah, that's.
And then you have your meatballs, obviously. And they're probably the three of the Sons of Italy has the red roast beef, which is a little different.
What's that?
It's roast beef, but it's not in a brown gravy. It's in a red gravy.
Red roast beef. I'm gonna write that down.
That's
See,
a specialty there.
I've never heard of that in any other town.
He loves this.
This is see,
This is
that's
John. John
your
loves this.
cannolis,
the sons and daughters
your
of Italy.
Italian
got it.
ice,
Yeah.
the water ice.
But finding those things that are just unique to you guys like that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like red roast beef might be the.
I went to
Well,
a
that's
feast.
different.
It's different, yeah. For the audience out there that wants to come and support or just support from
Because this
afar.
is history.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
important.
You want to say
For
there
our
are people,
history.
when
Yeah.
they
Okay.
coronated Our Lady of Mt Carmel in East Harlem, I think it was July 10th, 1904, they got people from Chicago, Rhode Island. It was such an important, monumentous event for the Italians, and they slept in Jefferson Park.
Wow.
So they came from all around the country, and then they slept outdoors. You can get a Hilton.
Yeah.
This is such an important thing. If you want to say, I want to see one Italian-American event in my lifetime that is historical, this is it. This is the
one.
number one. Nobody else. It is the oldest. You can only get pontifically and coronated once. They don't
Right.
do it twice. This is the one to go to, 150.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm glad it's on the feast day too because
Oh, it has to be.
it's a work day for us. We can come down and enjoy and really participate. That sounds fantastic.
have you.
We would really love that. I'll see if we can caravan. Give us the website for everybody out there who wants
It's
to
Our
support.
Lady of Mt Carmel Society.org.
Lady of Mt Carmel Society. We're going to put it on the screen and we're going to link it in our show page.
There's a documentary on there. There's this book is on there that we've done in a booklet form, and just excited to be a part of this and be able to spread the word for us. So thank you.
Oh, very, very happy that we could do this. I know Pat's been super excited, as you can tell. He's gearing up his kazoo for the. This kazoo.
You know why
Who
I
gave
tell-
you this kazoo? What listener?
The Lancets. I got to send them a thank you card yet. They sent me multiple green, white, and red kazoos.
It's
John
very,
loves
very
it.
kind. I got to send them whatever the opposite of a thank you card is. It is the loudest kazoo.
It's the best. It's a green,
It
white,
is
and red
super
kazoo.
It was like Dr. Seuss made that thing with the horn on it. It's.
You're jealous because you're not a.
It's true,
You're
I'm not as musically
I'm like
talented.
what Mozart was
That's
to the.
very
to, I'm
true.
like
That's
this
absolutely
is a
true.
Stradivarius.
Yes, that
You know what I'm
is
gonna play
very, very
today?
true.
Eviva Maria. I'm going to sing that.
That's
Eviva
beautiful.
Maria.
What a good way to end. And what perfect song for a perfect episode. We hope we see you guys out there. We will be there with bells on for the incoronation of Our Lady of Mt Carmel, Hammonton, New Jersey, the oldest Italian-American feast in the United States. Write that down. It's something worth celebrating. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bravo.
I'm getting better.
Feel that
You know
right
what
in the
I'm saying?
eardrums.
If you want your life to be great, see that you're born an Italiano and your life will be great. See that you're born an Italiano and your life will be great.